Welcome to Get Your Bell Rung Pro Wrestling Podcast. Guys, tonight is about respect. Not just for the main event names, not just for the Hall of Fame banners, but for the men who built the foundation that those banners hang from. Our guest tonight is a man who lived the grind of professional wrestling during one of its most competitive and unforgiving eras. A true journeyman in every sense of the word, a professional trusted to step into the ring with some of the most dominant, technical, and respectable names in the industry. He stood across from Big Van Vader when Vader was a force of nature. He shared the ring with the Malenko, Jeff Jarrett, Dusty Rhodes, and even every Armstrong brother and Bullet Bob Strong himself. He was the opponent in Blackjack Mulligan's final match. This is not a coincidence. That is trust. That is reliability. That is respect earned inside locker rooms most fans will never see. He was a staple in WCW Worldwide and WCW Pro during the height of the Monday Night Wars. When the pressure was real, the politics were intense, and every opportunity mattered. He may not have always been the name on the marquee, but he was part of the engine that kept the machine running. And decades later, his fingerprints are still on the business. From contributing to the video package for the Psycho Sid Hall of Fame induction to co-hosting the In-Ring Wrestling podcast with Kevin Kelly, he continues to give back to the industry that shaped him. Tonight, it's not about wins and losses. It's about sacrifice. It's about pride. It's about what truly means to be professional wrestling in a business that does not always thank you. It's my honor to welcome back a man who helped build an era, Cassey Thompson. How are you, my friend?
Oh, hey, thanks. Appreciate the introduction, and I'm glad to be back. It seems like I might, like I owe you money, or you owe me money or something. The introduction you gave me, but I'll take it. I appreciate it. It's been about a year since I've been on your show.
It did, man, and you were one of my first guests.
Oh wow!
And when I go back to watch those earlier episodes, I cringe. I was terrible.
Oh yeah, I do the same thing. Like you mentioned, my podcast, In-Ring Wrestling Podcast with Kevin Kelly and myself. We've been about November will make 2 years, and
Wow.
Kevin's a professional. He's just he just makes everything. He just makes it easy. He keeps the flow going, all that stuff. I can chime in when I need to, or stuff like that. But it makes it so much easier to have someone like that. He was out for a couple weeks. He had some mental health issues that he was dealing with, and no secrets. He's talked about it on the show and everything. So I did an interview with Alex Wright, an old buddy of mine from WCW, and I was like, man, this sucks. I do not want to do this by myself. I told Kevin, I said, Kevin, if you're not coming back, you can't do it. I said, we're done. I said, because I'm not doing it without you. Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, I don't even like to go back and listen to myself a year and a half ago, because it's brutal. So I know exactly where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, it got to the point that I said, look, either I have to do better or I have to be done. And it wasn't even about being better so I can look good. Look, I have a speech impediment, so I struggle. But it was a matter of I got to be better for my guests, because my guest deserves to at least have, I may not be perfect, but they deserve to have the best of me. And for the love of Christ, at the minimum, Cassey, what I could do is get their names right. Because they, a lot of my newer fans may not know this. Cassey, again, was one of my newer, my first guests. And my dumbass, well, I introduced him as Casey Anthony. Now, my wife, whenever I was talking about...
Not even just a murderer, but a woman, too.
Yes. And my wife warned me, said, Kevin, don't forget, it's Cassey Thompson. I'm like, I'm not going to make that mistake. It's sure as shit. So this is your third time being back, because the first episode I scratched and you gracefully come back. But I still feel bad for that, man. So I owe you a great interview.
Oh no, it's all good. I appreciate you just bringing me on. But I know where you're coming from, because sometimes in the beginning I would think like, "What's my podcast?" I came up with the name of the podcast. I'm like, "What's the name of the podcast?" I'm like, "Oh shit," So I have a whiteboard where I actually write notes behind the camera where I can see them. When I'm in the studio and everything, I have stuff everywhere where I have reminders, because I know exactly how it is. You talk about the speech pediment. Some of the best guys on the stick in wrestling ever. Cutting those promos. Like a really good friend of mine, he's actually 81 years old, Bugsy McGraw. He broke me into business. He has a really bad speech. We'll be talking, and he'll be like saying like, "Yeah, we went to Orlando. We went to." And don't try to finish it for him, because he's going to get hot. Just let him just sit there, and however long it takes. Well, you know what? You put that cigar in his hand and get him behind behind the mic and on the camera. He doesn't miss a word, doesn't miss a beat. So I use the podcast as therapy, because it helps with my my brain, my cognitive function, stuff like that. Because all these years of wrestling. I think I lost count. I think the last one I remember count was like I've had like over 13 concussions. Jeez. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of crazy stuff. So, but that's, what I'm not complaining about it, or, stuff like that. That's the path of life that I chose to go down, so, I can't really complain, because it was my choice. No one held a gun to my head or anything. And I enjoyed it. I'm not bitter. I'm opinionated, but doesn't mean I'm bitter. I'm content with what I did. There's not many people can say they've been in the ring with guys that I've been in the ring with, so, I'm I'm happy. I'm happy doing what I'm doing every week, just getting on, just telling some stories, talking about things that's going on, so it's, and it helps Kevin. It helps Kevin with, his mental, things. His therapist says, you doing a podcast is a good outlet for you, for your, his mental illness and everything. So it works out good for both of us,
Let's go into some of your journey. When you look back on the young man you were before professional wrestling, what was the young you searching for? Was there something you were searching for, or was it a matter of, man, I wasn't searching for anything, I just knew what I wanted to do?
No, I don't think I was searching for anything. I've told this, story a million times. It was when I was probably 10, 11 years old. My parents come from Michigan. Huge wrestling, it was big time championship wrestling with the original Sheik and everything. They went to all the matches. I have old pictures of my mom and dad with like the Stomper, Ben Justice, Bobo Brazil, Haystacks Calhoun. All those guys. My dad used to ring the bell, used to sweep out the ring in between matches and stuff like that. He refereed a little even, So I don't really say he was in the business. He just kind of was around the business and helped out when they needed some help. But we ended up moving down to Florida, South Florida, and we were in Fort Myers area, and they were watching old WWF wrestling with it was the Madison Square Garden Network. Actually, is I seen Hulk Hogan and all that, and I was like, oh man, this stuff's horrible. And then I was watching it at noon. Saturday at noon, I heard that music, heard the voice of Gordon Solie, then I heard Dusty Rhodes and Blackjack Mulligan, and it was like hooking a big fist. Zoom! I was hooked. And from that day on, I always said that when I grow up, I want to be a professional wrestler. Everyone's like, yeah, sure, kid, sure, kid. Sure, kid, that stuff's fake. I've heard everything. Right. So even when I graduated from high school, I went to a small private school. Everyone went up there and they had to tell what your plans after high school was, college, this and that, what you want to do in life. I said, and I was actually wrestling. I started 1980, late 88. Mm-hmm. I graduated high school in 1990. So I was wrestling at that time. I would wrestle on the weekends and stuff like that. And so I went up there and I said, yep, when I graduate, I want to continue pursuing my career in professional wrestling. They got hot, So it's not something that it's just something that I wanted to do. It was what I love to do. That was my dream, and I was able to fulfill that. Not many people can say,
Right.
hey, I had a dream, a childhood dream to do this. Some people, hey, I want to go to the moon when I get older, this and that. It doesn't happen, but it's only to a couple people, right?
Right.
So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a professional wrestler. And it was even more than that. It was just more fulfilling for me because I almost went like complete circle. I grew up watching Dusty Rhodes, Blackjack Mulligan, Bugsy McGraw, Cowboy Ron Bass, J.J. Dillon, all those guys, Abdul the Butcher. And it went full circle where, like you were telling earlier, Blackjack had, when he was with Eddie Mansfield for the IWF, that's where we first, I think it's the first person taped out at Universal Studios at the soundstage. So Blackjack was them. He's like, hey, come help, and like a lot of the guys are the shits. Come help, make them look good, because that's what I did, I did enhancement work and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, sure, that's it. And actually, there's a lot of heat from a lot of people. Like Flair had the book in WCW. If he heard that I was doing it, they would have just got rid of me, because Flair was, really hot about Eddie Mansfield still, because he's the one on 2020 that, stooged the business and everything. So I told Jack, I said, yeah, as long as I can wear a hood. He's like, yeah, no problem. So we wrestled as Dr. X or whatever it was, something like that. And I wrestled a bunch of the guys, and because Blackjack had a school there in Orlando, and I used to go all the time when I was in town, and I would help train the guys and everything. So that's where our relationship with Blackjack started. And I got to travel with him because we did a lot of the same shows. So, I rode down the road with him. And so I got onto that whole, tree of knowledge from him. And it just happened to be that his last match he ever wrestled, I was one of the guys he was against. It was a little thing going on. It happened to be the last match ever at for Florida, it's like Madison Square Garden. It's the Eddie Graham Sports Stadium. Every Sunday night they were there. I'm sure you've heard Bob talk about Eddie Graham before. I wrestled the last match ever there before they tore it down.
Oh, wow.
Against Blackjack Mulligan's last match ever.
Right.
So it was really cool. I got to wrestle one of the TV tapings for IWF. I wrestled Blackjack. This is way before this, and Jack's like, hey, what do you want to do? I'm like, Jack, it's your match. Whatever you want to do. He's like, no, you call it. I said, nah, Jack, it's your match. I said, if I call it, I'm gonna make myself look good. He's like, whatever you want, do it. So he wrestled the hour before, because we do like 4 or 5 tapings all one day there. So the hour before, he wrestled against a guy his size, a big 6'4" guy that was 340 pounds. I think his name's Tony Mella, a Lebanese assassin. Great guy, nice guy. Jack just squashed him, didn't do it, just laid it in, squashed and killed him. We went out there. This time I was small. I was probably 200 pounds. I was lean 200 pounds. So back then I was small for wrestlers. I was a smaller guy. And we went out there, and he's taking shoulder tackles, drop downs, hip tossing them, arm dragging them, body slamming them, all that stuff. And people were like, huh? What was, it was just, all it was a respect thing, because all the time and efforts I put in at his, training facility, he, that was his way of paying me back, sort of like showing respect to me by like, here, you do what you want. I'm going to sell for you, which, Blackjack never sold for hardly anyone ever in the business, Right. And he'd always just go down to one knee and work himself back up. So he still got his licks in. I remember him he back me in the corner, air where everyone could see me. He's like, watch the tater, kid, and come down, bam, big old forearm to the chest. So, I got that. And then Kevin Sullivan was one of the guys that I watched growing up as a kid. And ended up being Kevin Sullivan. I met him the first time when I was 15 years old. And we always had a nice little connection. And he always took care of me at WCW, put me on all kinds of stuff. You know, when he was the booker there, and became really good friends with him till the day he died. And he's been in my house, stayed in my house before, knows my whole family. When he was down in Alamorada in Key West, not Key West, but the Keys of Florida, I used to go down. And he used to have a guest house. He used to stay down there for a few days. This before my kids were born, and then afterwards, when they were born and everything. So I didn't go down, but we used to travel together. I got to learn from him, which, he's probably one of the greatest minds ever in the wrestling business. He's up there with Pat Patterson and guys like that. He learned from Eddie Graham. So it was, and then we ended up running a promotion together. I was business partners with him when he moved out to Washington. I used to go out and stay at his place outside of Seattle on a little island out there. So I mean, I was able to go full circle with watching them and becoming a peer with them and being friends. So I went all the way around it. So I mean, it was really cool, really special. Bugs McGraw was one of the guys who broke me in the business when we first started. I wrestled him every single night, and he laid everything, and he'd be like, and he expected me to lay it in too. Hit me harder, kid, harder. He used to say, harder, kid, harder. And I'm like, I can't hit you any harder. I'm hitting you as hard as I'm throwing a live round, and he's telling me to go harder. So I'm still really close with him. He's 81 years old. He lives in a couple hours from me, Daytona Beach Shores. So I see him all the time. We talk all the time on the phone. He's and for 81 years old, man, this guy is on it. I hope I'm like him when I'm that age, because he remembers everything. And I tell you what, just sitting there talking to him is like education. You learn about all the territories, all that stuff. He tells me what his opinion on everyone was. So it's really cool. It's special. So, I enjoy my conversations. But I know when I sit down with him, we're going to be on the phone for an hour or two. So it's like, he's not afraid to talk. So it's fun.
Yeah. Before we go into Bob Cook, talk about your boots. My wife and I, we're moving to Florida in August. So.
Oh, are you moving still to Ocala?
Yes. We're going to.
You'll be about 30 minutes from me, 25 minutes from me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Bob, Speaking of someone else I'll be near, and my co-host says, what size are those boots to your right? Because Christmas will be here before you know it.
I think his shoe's too big. That's one of the things I do. I actually collect wrestling belts, and I also collect the wrestling boots, like Barry Windham, Blackjack, Dusty, all them wore. They were. It was by a company named Austin Hall. They're out of business now, so it's hard to find these boots, and it's like a double eagle and everything. So whenever I do, I grab a hold of them. I have another pair at the cobbler right now. I actually have a pair of the white and red ones that's getting the soles put on, and I just acquired another pair that I had to switch over the soles. So pair of black ones. There's like Ron Bass and Black Bart wore, so I had to switch those out. So I mean, it's a little thing. I have my office as my studio, and I have all my memorabilia and I have 36 wrestling belts. I like all the belts from the territory days. It just gives me something to reminisce from, something. I was telling a girl, I said, it could be worse. I said, I could be going out to the bar drinking every night, gambling, this or that. I stay at home. I do my thing. I collect my belts. So I get them made. I get them made from makers over in Pakistan. They do a really good job. So I'm always commissioning ones to get done and stuff like that. So I do that. I do my boots and stuff like that. So it keeps me busy, keeps me happy and everything. So, but unfortunately, Bob, these ones are definitely too small for you. I think they're like 9.5. But
when you talk about Bugsy, telling you to hit me harder, kid. Cassey, is it one of those things that these guys were truly that much of a badass, or is it one of them that, well, kind of, they were badasses, but every time you take a book, I've been told by Bob and so many other wrestlers that it's literally like getting involved in a car accident, right? That type of impact. Does your entire body get so calloused that you want to feel those hits because you don't feel what you would normally a regular person would feel when it comes to those strikes.
Yeah, not anymore. I feel it all now.
Yeah.
I get out of bed, I'm like, I had to stand up and then straighten my body up where I start to get up as straight as I can get. Yeah, just a lot of the guys in the old days, they just because of kayfabe and everything like that, they wanted to give away anything, so they always made it, when in front of the people, you're a little snug, a little stiff, laid in, to make it look real. So that's all that was with Bugsy, because he, big about, he started in the 50s,
50s, yeah.
So I mean, that's all about their, the business was kayfabe, protecting the business. And I think that's what happened with the state of today's business, is they didn't protect it. I protected it, but the next generation stopped.
Right.
And it just started going a little weird from there, I guess.
Yeah. Talk about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, best era in professional wrestling, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You mentioned a word earlier. You said enhancement.
Right.
When you hear people using the words jobber or enhancement, does that bother you? I know some guys it bothers, because the fact of the matter is that we would not have the Ric Flairs, the Hulk Hogans, none of these guys if it wasn't for the guys who made them.
Right. Yeah, I don't really pay much attention to any. Most of the time, it's people that never been in the business, so they learn the lingo, so they think they're cool. They're behind their keyboards and typing this stuff and all Facebook and all this stuff, thinking they're cool. Oh, he's just, and as they use it in the wrong context all the time, and it just drives me nuts. And it just shows how stupid they are. So I just laugh at it. I don't really care. I don't take anything personal, because the fact is, cause I tell you what, when we used to go to the ring, the way it was done back in the day, we'd go there and they'd have like 40 matches on the card, like all television matches, so squash matches, 3-minute matches, 7-minute matches, real quick. And the format sheet would say in ring, and that's hence how they got the name of my podcast is in ring, because we didn't get a M&E, music and entrance. We were just in ring. We'd walk out. When the winner was coming back, we'd be walking with the referee to the ring.
Right.
And we'd already be in the ring, come back from commercial break, it'd go right to the entrance for the M&E music entrance for, whoever we were going to wrestle. So it was brutal when we go to the ring and they'd be like, you suck, you're going to get your ass kicked, this and that. And I'm like, what, screw you. You paid the ticket to come watch it. You're paying me. So, I mean, they'd throw shit at you, spit it. I mean, you name it, it would happen. It was brutal. So I'd be like, oh, man, I can't. Even if you were a good guy, it didn't matter. They just wanted to, there's a group of people that just wanted to heel on you and just, just go into the ring and everything. So, no, I don't let anything bother me, because, the things I've done is what they wish they could do.
Right.
I've wrestled, Steve Austin. I've wrestled Ric Flair. I've wrestled, there's a very few that I haven't wrestled. Hulk Hogan, I never wrestled. I was actually on the board to wrestle him one night, and that whole story where it was going around the locker room that Hogan was going to wrestle an enhancement guy. And so I'm like, ooh, man, that'd be a really good match to get, right? So I'm like, oh, let me figure this out. So at that time, Hogan had his own. Hogan was in the red and yellow before the NWO and everything. So I was like, oh, I want that match. So I was like, let me talk to Pee Wee Anderson, Randy Anderson. That was Hogan's referee for everything. So I'm like, hey, Pee Wee, man, is the rumor going around true? He's like, yeah, man. I said, oh, man, I'd like to get that match. He's like, yeah, everyone does. I'm like, but I said, yeah, but I'll give my payday to have that match. He's like, stopped and looked at me. He's like, for real? I'm like, yeah, I swear to God. He's like, no problem. It'd be you. So the next day we got the TV. The board's already made out. It says Hulk Hogan versus in ring Cassey Thompson. And everyone's like, whoa, how'd that happen? How'd that happen? I'm like, no, I don't know. I guess Hogan likes me. I don't, I was just kind of playing it off. I was just kayfabe and the fact that I talked to Pee Wee and all that stuff. And then as how wrestling goes, everything changes.
Mhm.
So they decided to change the match to Hogan and Savage against Pretty Wonderful, Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma. So they're like, don't worry, you have the day off. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So, and this was at Disney, so I had that hour off. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm like looking around, I'm like trying to sneak out the back. I was going to go into the park and go walk around for that hour and a half and get back and see what's happening for the next tape. And I had like a foot out the door and I hear Terry Taylor say, Cassey, where are you going? I'm like, nowhere. He's like, I'm off. He's like, no, we got a match now. I'm like, oh, okay. I look, he says, who do you have? He looked and says, Vader. I'm like, oh, fuck. So I went from potentially wrestling Hulk Hogan, which is great to have him the day off, still getting paid. I'm like, all right, cool. And then to wrestling Vader. And I had wrestled Vader so many times, and he's just such an asshole. He didn't protect anyone. He all he cared about was himself. Right. So this is a particular match. I was in the corner with him. He throwing those big giant haymakers and hitting you. And every time he hit me, I just see stars do boom, boom. Like on cartoons, you see those stars. Zoom, zoom. That's what it was like in real life. And my head felt about this big. And my hair, every time he punched me, my hair would get bigger and bigger and bigger. It would just grow. And I was always in the corner, and he was real close to me. So all I was just doing was rolling with the punches, trying not to get killed. So we finished the match and everything. And I was livid. I was pissed. I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I don't care if they never use me again. If I get my ass kicked, I get fired. I'm not putting with this. I'm not tolerating this abuse from him any longer. So, and there was myself, the ring announcer, David Penzer, another enhancement guy, actually good friends with Bob, named Nasty Ned Brady. And Mick Foley talks about him in his book, and everything. So, it was right where, I don't want to say gorilla position. It was a little after that. It was kind of an small area with just tables where you just get your ring jacket and stuff like that before you go to the back. And we get there, we get in the back, and I'm standing there waiting on Vader to get there. He's like, come up to me. He's like, so what happened, kid? I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. I said, you're a piece of shit. I said, you learn you don't take care of anyone. I said, you're just throwing those big old stiff punches in there you don't care if you hurt someone or not and stuff like that. And I was waiting, and everyone else was waiting for him just to go crazy and just like, attack me or whatever, and I just said, you need to learn how to work, you need to take care of the boys and this. I unleashed everything. Because I figured if it was my last time ever here, I'm going to say whatever I want to say, right? And he just said, I just put you over with Flair. I'm like, I don't need your help. I don't need you to, tell Flair. And Flair was the booker then, And he just put his head down and just walked away. And Penzer and Nasty, everyone was like, and, so there's only a few of us was there for it. But I just stood up to him because I was just tired of it. And then I would say less than a month is when he smarted off to Orndorff and that center stage and that whole fight happened up there.
Right. You were considered the journeyman. And the reason being it was because you were a workhorse. I mean, you know what? You may have been a quote unquote enhanced talent, but you were respected. You were a workhorse, right? You knew how to do your job. What does that term journeyman mean to you?
It's journeyman. Another word for it's carpenter. We're the ones who, carpenter. We're the ones who build the house. We're the ones we build the stars. So and a lot of enhancement guys, got their break. Some didn't. So it's really was a matter of luck. So, but yeah, it's, I was lucky enough to be able to do my job good enough where I had the trust from the guys I was working to where, they took care of me and stuff like that. And they knew that I was going to take care of them and put them over to help build their career and build them. I'll give you an example. Sid Vicious just got inducted to the Hall of Fame, and I wrestled Sid a lot in WCW too. Like I was saying, when I first started, I was a little smaller, so I was the the new bait for all these big guys, big monsters, and threw me all over the place and everything. So I wrestled Sid a bunch of times. So he left, went to WWF, and I'm booked on the show. I'm wrestling the Mountie, which is, Jock Rizzo is just easy. I mean, it's like a night off, you don't feel anything. So
Right.
I'm like sitting there, and Sid walks by. He's like, "Oh my God, you're here tonight." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I want to wrestle you." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, Sid. I'm already working someone." He's like, "Oh no!" He grabbed me by the hand like I was a child, and he took us up in the agent Rene Goulet. He's like, "Hey, I want to work him tonight." He's like, "Oh, Sid, we already made the match. We're not changing everything." "No, I want to work him." So he drugged me down to the next agent, to Rene Goulet. He's like, "No, Sid, we've already made the match." And he's like, "No, I want." So he grabs me, takes me to Pat Patterson. He's like, "I want to work him. I worked him in Atlanta, and he knows how to do all my stuff." He's like, "Shit, we already, everything's done." He takes me to Vince's office, by the hand, still by the arm. It's like, "Vince, I want to work him. He's the only one. I worked him a bunch of times in Atlanta. He knows how to do all my stuff. No one else here can do anything." He's like, "I want to work him. He knows he's good. It's gonna be great." And he's like, "Sid, if that's what you want, that's what you got." So there's one match out there, and I figured, because WCW, each time you wrestled, you got paid another payday. In WWF, you got one payday for the whole day. So
Oh,
you could
wow.
wrestle one time or five times, you got paid once. So, um, and looking back now, I would want to wrestle everyone I can, but back then I wanted to just get paid. So I didn't want, I'm like, "Oh man, I got to wrestle another one for free." So there's a taping out there. At the beginning of the show, I wrestled the Mountie, and at the end of the show, I wrestled Sid. And they just kept me in. They didn't change it
Oh,
or anything. So it's out there somewhere, something. So Sid's like very appreciative. And then about a month or two later, um, we're at Biloxi, Mississippi, somewhere in the South, and I'm in a handicap match against Sid, myself, and a guy named Matt Burns, which was Rob Van Dam.
yep.
And Rob's talked about it a bunch and everything. So we went out there, and like I was telling you, like you're talking, the people trust me and everything. I would call a lot of my stuff when I wrestled, because I would call nice spots that would put the
Right.
guys over. So, um, but I called it smart. If you watch the one match that's in a handicap against me and Robbie against Sid, I called the opening spot where did something where Sid ended up giving me a choke slam. He choke slammed me. I got up, turned around, and he coming off the rope with a big boot, and I took a bump over the top rope. And I called that spot. So, but I called myself look good. That Big Sid gave me big vicious guy gave me you know, a choke slam, and I popped right up from it. So I made it to where I looked good, but it still put him over. And we did all kinds of stuff. We did his whirly bird, big power bombs, threw us on the gurneys and all that stuff. And after the match, he's like, guys, man, I really appreciate it. He's like, he's like, I was here, but now because of you guys, I'm up here. And
Right.
they dropped the world title on him after that. He's like, I know it's not a lot of money, but I just want to show my appreciation to you guys. He gave both of us $20 each. He's like, I know it's not a lot. He's like, but get yourself some beers or get yourself dinner tonight or something on me. I just wanted to show my appreciation for what you guys done for me. And that's unheard of in the business. I mean, back in the old days it might have happened, but not definitely not now. Never happened. It only happened to me one time, and it was from him. And so I mean, he was always very appreciative um, of us. Always, always treat us like we were one of the boys and everything. So it's not like we were just like, "Hey, you're job guys," where you hear people like, "Oh, the job guys have their own locker room. They can't go with all the stars." That's bullshit. We all sat in the same locker room. I remember being in out in Kansas or Missouri, yeah, Kansas City, Kansas, and we're looking around like, "Oh, let me find a broiler room," because it was a small locker room, so he was trying to get some space. And Flair came and was like, "Hey, do you mind if I change in here with you guys?" Like, sure. This is in WWF when he jumped over and everything. So we're all together and everything. So I'm gonna give you another thing, and this I think might have been one of my biggest compliments ever I've gotten in the wrestling business. I was brought in WWF for a tryout match, and my buddy at the time, D'Lo Brown, hooked it up. So I went up there, and so I'm talking to Arn Anderson. Arn was one of the agents, and right when we're talking, like in the hallway and everything, Stephanie McMahon walks up, and he was like, "Oh, hey, Stephanie, I want to introduce you to someone. This is Cassey Thompson. He's one of the boys from Atlanta." So I mean that's just validation right there. You have Arn Anderson, undoubtedly one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, to tell Stephanie McMahon that that he's one of the boys.
Right.
So I mean that's that was just a big compliment, for that and everything. So, but yeah, it's it was that's the stuff that kind of happened, and then watching Sid's Hall of Fame video package, I was like, oh, there I am. I've seen it everywhere.
Cassey, I actually paused it because I swear to you, and I paused it and brought it back because it was pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I went, I think that's Cassey, and she's like, who? I said, Cassey Thompson. You don't remember he was on my podcast? She's like, Cassey Thompson went. I called him Casey Anthony. She was like, oh yeah. She looked. She's like, I think that is him. That was. Yeah. I was like, hell yeah. I mean, and that has to be a big deal to you just because of the fact they had so much footage to pick from.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's and then some of the boys are saying they're like, oh yeah, you're in this one, and tell me all the times it's on there because I don't watch the product hardly ever anymore. I try to watch it as least as possible. So
Bob Cook says those dirty jobbers disgust me.
So yeah, so it's another time actually it just came to mind is my first time ever wrestling for WWF. I actually rode up to two of my buddies that I started with, John and Scott Allen. And the first night, I said, I wasn't booked. So I said, you know what? If you don't try, they're not going to come knocking on my door. I got to go knock on theirs. So I walked in and got nothing. I let them know that I was there and everything, nothing at all. I just ate, cater, and everything, hung out. The next day, we went the next time, I think it was, I don't know, Biloxi, Mississippi again. They always did Biloxi. They did a Biloxi and Pensacola double shot. So we're there, and Tony Gurria was like, "Hey, can anyone take Legion of Doom's finish? Anyone take their finish?" And everyone's like, "I'm like, oh, I can. That's easy." They're like, "Okay, you're gonna wrestle them tonight." I'm not even booked on the show. You are now. I'm like, "Oh, okay." And back then, you didn't want, the big stigma was, oh, you don't want them to hurt your career by who you're using your real name and all that. And he's like, well, what name do you want to use? So what's your real name? I said, Cassey Thompson. He's like, oh, why don't you use Mike Cassey? I'm like, okay. So that's what I used was Mike Cassey. And so when Tony walked away, I looked at my buddies and I'm like, hey, what's Legion Doom's finish? I don't even know. They're like, oh, it's a Doomsday. You sit on I'm like, clothesline off the top, off the shoulders. I'm like, oh, that's easy. I was confident enough that I could do anything. So we get in there and they're like, hey, listen, we'll do it all for you. When we go under your legs, he said, I'll give you Iggy on your calves. When I do that, just do a calf raise and I'll pop you right up on my shoulders. He says, and then from there, he said, don't do anything. We'll do it all. I'll push you when an animal comes off the top rope. For the clothesline, I'll push your legs up and you'll just do a flip and land on your eat flat. I'm like, okay. I always like to do everything a little more pizzazz, kind of stand out and all that. So I pushed off the animal's head too. And so I ended up doing 1, 2, all the way around. I almost did 3 flips and landed on my belly. And that was on all the sizzle reels going into SummerSlam and WrestleMania that year. It was on all the time, that big flip and everything. So it's happened a few times. So it's kind of cool. You're right. They have hours and hours and hours of footages to pick from. So it's kind of cool, kind of a, it makes you feel good once in a while when it's small, little, but it's you.
Hey,
So it's hey, that was me. So it's kind of cool.
let me ask you a question about success. You mentioned a little bit ago about some guys. Your words, not mine, because I don't use a jobber enhancement word. I don't. I said professional wrestlers, but your words, some enhancement talent, they got they were able to get lucky and get themselves going, right? I want to ask you about success for you because if I was judging if you had a successful career, I'd say, hell yeah, Cassey had a successful career. He was not only because you were in these matches with all these main event top guys, but because of the level of respect that these guys had for you. Because not only did you make them look good, but more importantly, they trusted you.
Yeah.
Does that stick in your mind as, yep, I was successful, or was successful for you the amount of money you were able to make to support yourself and your family?
No, I mean, I don't think it's was everything. I mean, yeah, it's a lot about money and stuff like that. I remember when I first started, it was like, oh yeah, if you're on TV and you have yourself a Halliburton suitcase and a Rolex, you made it. You're big time, and that's how we used to all think like that back
Right.
then. And
Now, now shake
at
my
a
hand, Bob
Halliburton,
Cook. Bob says he's traveled with Bob Cook. How much more successful is that? Bob Cook
yeah,
still
that's
putting himself over, ladies and gentlemen. I love you, Bob.
yeah. I have a lot of Bob Cook stories.
Oh, we'll get into that. I know you do.
So, but yeah, I did okay. I was fortunate enough to able to just wrestle for a long time. Didn't have to have any other jobs. So, um, but I was constantly, it's not like now, it's so easy nowadays because back then we had to send pictures and make videos and send tapes
Right,
to them. Now it's over their social media, it's over there. Just send
right.
a quick little, tag them in something. I mean, before you had to constantly be on the phone, getting yourself booked and sometimes I see my old calendar books and everything to look through to see where I was at all the time and stuff like that. So um, but one of the good things is because I wrestled a lot as when I was younger as a baby face.
Mhm.
So independent shows and stuff like that. Yeah, I might be making $50, but yeah, I'm making 150, $150 selling pictures and later on T-shirts and all that,
Right.
all my merch and all that stuff. So yeah, I was because we're talking back in the you know late '80s, early '90s, and all that. So cost of living was a little bit cheaper. So you're able to do all that stuff because, ironically, I think they're still making $50 for their paydays. 40 years later, it's like
Come on.
there's never a cost of living raise for the boys. It's
Yeah.
always, yeah, I got to see a $50 payday and stuff like that. So for a lot of guys, it's success is determined by how much money you make and stuff like that. Success for some people is um, being able to say, "Hey, I was on TV." Success is, like I said, having a Halliburton and a Rolex watch and stuff like that. For some people, success to me is being able to be respected in the locker room by my peers and to be able to call everyone from the top to the bottom a peer, being an equal. And I,
Right.
I was able to accomplish that. So, I'm happy, content with what I've done and
Right.
everything.
It's like you're reading my mind. We're going to the next questions because I want to. Growing up as a wrestling fan, um, there were the Von Erich family that I knew, but the family that I was really exposed to was the Armstrong family.
Oh, yeah.
I knew of the Hart family, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't exposed to WWF at that point. Didn't
Right.
really know about Canadian. I read in magazines about them, but mainly it was the Von Erichs and the Armstrongs. You had the opportunity to face every Armstrong, including
Yeah.
Bullet Bob. And this is my
Yeah.
question because you said that, being able to call these people your peers. For myself, and obviously it's different because I'm just a fan. if I ever got to meet these guys, I'd been like, I am in the presence of greatness, wrestling royalty, if you will,
Right.
family
Yeah.
wise. But for you, you're one of the boys, you're wrestling. Did you have that same thought of, wow, this is like kind of wrestling royalty because of this family? Or was it, they're just my peers?
No, I mean, yeah, they're my peers, but still, um, pretty much anyone that ever got into wrestling, majority of people were a fan first, you know. So everyone was a mark before they became one of the, when they got in the business, became one of the boys. So yeah, I mean, um, I was able to wrestle. I was fortunate enough to be able to wrestle all the brothers in, um, and then I was wrestling a lot for Steve Armstrong. He used to run shows up in Mid Alabama, North Florida, Alabama, all that stuff back, the old continental territory. So he used to run shows up there, and he's the one who really changed my mind about the business because he's like, "Not screw this, you being a job guy." He says, you know what? Everyone knows who you are. You're on TV every week. He's like, and that's the fact is you're on TV. He says, so yeah. So he's like, yeah, I want you to wrestle for me because you're on TV every week. I'm like, oh, maybe I should ask for a little bit more money. And so he brought me in he'd wrestle, he'd run shows every couple, like 2 or 3 times a month. So he'd always bring me in, and I'd always find, he'd always he said he'd bring someone with you to drive you, stuff like that. Give them, hey, and give you an opportunity to be on the show. It's basically just to drive us up. It's part of the business. Everyone's done it and everything. So I'd bring someone up to cut the expenses down and everything. And so I'd wrestle him and Scott all the time on his shows. And then one of the shows once he went to the hotel before the show. He's in there. They're all smoking. They're big smizzer. They're all, a lot of weed. So we call it wrestling called smiz. And so they're all smizzing in there. I don't do that, but I was like, oh.
Right.
And so went in the locker room and they're like, hey, went to the hotel room before the show. And so I went and seen him. The Bullet was in there. Bob Armstrong. He's like, hey, Cassey, man. They're like, hey, man, you're wrestling the Bullet tonight. I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, hey, Cassey, I've heard a lot about you. Please just don't hurt me. I'm an old man and everything. I'm like, no, please. Absolutely not. He's like, what do you want to do? I said, why don't we just start off slow and taper down from there? He's like, oh, man, that sounds good. So, and it's crazy. Went out there and a couple of hundred people, 300-400 people out there. But this ring was the platform off the ring is usually about 3.5 foot from the ground. This thing was about 5.5 foot. I'm looking, I'm like, how the hell? There's no ring steps. I'm like, how the hell is he going to get in this ring? Because I'm thinking, how am I going to get in this ring? And he had no problem getting out of it. So basically, when they threw you off the ropes, was like getting thrown over the top rope every time. It was really high off the ground, the craziest ring I've seen like that. And man, those people were on fire the whole time. The Bullet was huge. He was a huge superstar in wrestling. He was over. And so, through all that, I got to wrestle all the brothers. And I didn't really think much of it at the time because there's just, hey, it's the Armstrongs, they're good old boys, they're Brad. I mean, all of them, they're all great workers and just really good guys, so because I remember Tracy Smothers and Brad and
Love Tracy, man.
Steve, they used to all ride in this little RV, the TV tapings, and they always showed up late because they were like smizzing, driving on the road, and like, oh man, that's our exit, like 20-40 miles past us, So they pull up and get out of the RV, open the door. It's like Cheech and Chong, all the smoke rolling out of it and everything, and spraying cologne on their clothes and everything. So I mean, there's this, good old guys. So, but it wasn't until I was hearing like Steven Regal talk about, yes, I'm like royalty. I'm like one of the few that's wrestled all the Armstrongs, including the father. I'm like, wait a second, I've done that too. I'm like, I forgot about that. So to be honest with you, there's not a lot of people that's actually wrestled all of them. They might have wrestled all the brothers, but they didn't get to wrestle the Bullet. And that's the big thing was the Bullet. So I mean, I was just like wrestling blackjack. I grew up watching him, so it was just an honor to be in the ring with him, and it was like a thrill of a lifetime to be in the ring with guys like that you grew up watching, and you became full circle and became an equal to. So, and you're in there calling the match, or calling your part of the match and everything. So it was a lot of fun, and it was an honor.
Bob says, ring rats prove that being on TV even mattered to us dirty jobbers. Bob, you're killing me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, this next question.
I have a story on that, too.
Yeah.
We were somewhere, it's WCW, and the only thing that separated, Bob might know it, the only thing that separated the locker room was like the barricades, and they had pipe and drape, the curtains. So, and that was the only thing. There was a lot of locker rooms that were makeshift where I remember once Ron Simmons knocked over the pipe and drape, and everyone was like scurrying around, kayfabing, because all the boys were standing right there. Sort of like how, what's it, Tugboat Typhoon did when he fell over. Yeah, sort of like that. But I remember once we were this, and the pipe and drape's open, and I'm standing there, and I'm actually standing next to Flair, and there's this girl. I was like, hey, like pointing, and Flair's like, oh, what's going on? Like, oh no, not you, him. And so I went and I talked to her. I came back. She's like, oh, what does she want? I said, she wanted me. She didn't want you. So he's like, I said, yeah, she told me meet me out she actually said, meet me by the TBS truck after matches. And it happened to be the first of a double shot. So we always leave the matches and go to the next town and get our room where we'd already be there the next day. So I'm like, missed out on that, but oh well. But it was just nice that she called me over, the Nature Boy.
Right. That's an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that. One more question about the Armstrongs, and let me preface this though before I ask this question. I mean no disrespect whatsoever towards the Hart family or the Von Erichs. I love them both. I've had Ross Hart on my podcast. Great guy. I love Ross and Bob Johnson, all those gentlemen. But do you agree or disagree that the Armstrong family should absolutely be in the same conversations as the Hart and the Von Erichs because of what they also brought to the wrestling business?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's different. I think the big thing was because it was territory days. So, I mean, he was, the Bullet, the Armstrongs were as big as anything in the, the South of, the South of the United States. They were huge. I mean, they'd sell every building every night. I mean, yeah, there's a few families. I think, actually another family that doesn't get their due is the Wyndham family. Blackjack Mulligan, Barry Wyndham, Kendall. Yeah, their brother and son-in-law, Mike Rotunda. And then Mike's kids, Bo Dallas, Wyatt.
Yes.
All them. So, I mean, there's a lot of different families in wrestling. But every time you talk about the legendary families of wrestling, absolutely the Armstrongs need to be in that conversation because, I mean, they not only were they really good in the ring, I think what was really big about the Armstrongs, the difference is they are great in the ring, but they're great people outside of the ring. They're good people. I mean, they're just down to earth, just one of the boys. And that's the difference between a lot of the other the other families of wrestling that we brought up and talked about.
Before I go into WWF versus WCW, I want to ask you one more question as far as professional wrestlers and their roles being the guys that are making the main eventers look great. We don't have that for the most part in today's wrestling, right? And do you think that's really hurt the business? Because think about this, and I'm not a wrestling historian, don't claim to be, so I can't remember who the opponents were, but I never forget when the Mulkey brothers were facing main event tag team, and they somehow got the win.
Yeah.
That pop and that feeling I even had was just so it was excitement, right?
Right. Yeah.
And because you were always rooting for the underdog, unless they were going against your favorites, obviously. I always wanted to see Bob Cook win. Always wanted to see Cassey win, right? You don't have that anymore. How do you really think that's hurt the business?
I mean, there's a million different ways to look at it. To me, I think it hurts the business. I think they depend on video packages, pre-tapes, and stuff like that to hell, I think nowadays they use their ring entrances to get their guys over instead of the action inside the ring. I mean, you look at WrestleMania, they had the first night they only had 90 minutes of wrestling out of 4 hours. I think 2.5 hours was ring entrances. So tell me how they're getting themselves over. They're getting themselves over their catchy songs, stuff like that. They're not relying on their ability and their work in the ring. And I think that's the difference between back then and now. Back then is, you had, 30 seconds to get in the ring. They tell you exactly in the format sheet, say M&E 30 seconds. Only a couple guys had a longer entrances because they wanted to get into the ring, get to business, and then you have 4 or 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, however it is, to get yourself over. And they're not doing that nowadays. They're, like I said, I think they're using everything else, so from social media to all of them, because all the guys, they have to be active on their social media. That's one of their requirements. They have to be active in their social media to put themselves over and everything. So I think that's a big key element that's missing in today's wrestling, in my opinion. But but what it did is back then it made a lot of opportunity for guys like me and Bob and Mike Prather. I mean, millions of guys to go and wrestle and be on TV all the time. So it's a thing that's not doesn't happen like you said anymore. And I cherish it now because I happen to be one of the guys that was able to do it.
Right. We doing good on time? Because like I said, talk to you all night. You doing okay with time?
No, I'm good. I don't have anything.
All right. Just want to make sure. Before we go into the next question was going to be, I want to talk about what you thought the biggest difference between WCW and WWF now was. But before you go into that, I want you to tell the story about, because this story to me is a perfect example of the type of worker that you were and how serious you were about the business and the lengths that you would go to make sure you got it right. When you first started in the business, if I remember correctly, you were under a mask and you actually slept with that mask on. So you get used to that mask to make sure you perform correctly.
Yeah.
Right? Talk to me about that.
I'd say wrestling under a mask is totally different. It'll blow you up and you just, you have to get used to it. Half the times people go in there, psychologically, they're going to go in there and get blown up and everything. So I practiced in it a few times and wore it. I wrestled, I was American Samurai was my name. And so I'd wear the mask and try to get used to it because mine wasn't even, usually you have the holes in the nose and the mouth. Mine had, the eyes were blacked out. The mouth was covered and all that stuff. So, I kind of wore it for a few times sleeping, just trying to get used to it. And then it evolved from there. I ended up sewing having a weave sold into the mask to have long hair. Then I put those beads on. I did all kinds of different things to it a bunch. But yeah, I mean, the thing, you do all kinds of stuff because the last thing you want to do is go out there and, have a mask on and start sucking air and can't move around the ring and just look horrible and everything. So yeah, I did do that. I don't know if everyone has or did, but it worked for me. I never had any issues.
Yeah, I just think that's a testament to the kind of person that you are and that you were, back then that you cared so much about that match and about how you presented yourself and how you looked that you did something like that. That story has always stuck to me, stuck with me. Um, let's go to the WWF, now E, and WCW. Was there a major difference as far as the locker rooms when you went there, or was it no some new faces? But other than that, it was a bunch of guys love wrestling.
Back then in the 90s, I think the biggest, the two biggest differences with the companies that really stood out to me is the locker rooms were a little more at ease, shall we say, when you went into WWF. Everyone was kind of a little bit more laid back, like um, WCW. I mean, they bring guys in, get rid of them, fire them, and stuff like that. So, they're always, worrying about their jobs and stuff like that. It seems like WWF, they're more like secure in their position with the company. So they were all a little more laid back. And I think um, the biggest factor between the two is that WWF's catering was 1,000 times better than WCW's. And
Well,
you have a call time at 1 o'clock, and so it's like, what am I going to do? So
right.
you have to be in the building. So I used to sit there and watch the setup, and I would watch the pre-tapes, the promos, and stuff like that. And a lot of people would just sleep, and some people played cards and all that. And I remember once we were walking. I'm coming downstairs from catering, going through the arena, and Mike Rotunda's like, "What do we got to eat today?" Because it was always brutal. And whenever we went to Perry, Georgia, we were at the state fairgrounds there. Um, they always catered a place called Sonny's Barbecue,
Mm.
and I was like, "Oh man, it's good tonight at Sonny's Barbecue." He's like, "Oh man, let me hurry up and get there." And so I'm at certain buildings like when every Monday we were always in Atlanta, Georgia at Center Stage, and their food was just horrible. Oh, it's disgusting. So when you went to WWF, you're like, oh my God, they had like prime rib here. They had this, that. They had chicken breast, not leg quarters. It was
Right.
like it doesn't seem like a lot, but it really made a big difference between the two places. And then they had um, like packed lunches for after the show. And I don't know if they're for me or for us, but we always took we always took it.
Right.
We always grabbed one of them to take for on the road and everything. And one of the differences is WCW, where it was better is they paid you for each match per
Mm.
day. WWF paid you one time.
Right.
So that's the one of the bigger things. And then um, WWF, where it was better than WCW is the rental cars and stuff like that. And WCW, um, I didn't really rent the cars for that one. So, but WWF they actually, because I was 18 years old, I wasn't old enough to rent a rental car. They would send down a voucher. It was like their credit cards or rent the car directly to me. And I always got the Lincoln Town cars or the Cadillacs because I'm like, hey, they're paying for it. I'm going to drive it, right?
Right.
And WCW didn't pay for our hotel rooms, but WWF would pay for our hotel rooms. So they
No.
paid us less, but WWF paid us less per match, but there's more benefits, shall we
Right.
say. So they had better food. They paid you for your rent a car. They paid for gas or mileage, and then they also paid for your hotel. Because I remember once that um, Tony Grillo was going around to the enhancement guys like, guys, um, we'd like for you guys to be here. We appreciate everything you do, but we would like for you to rent like a mid-sized car, not a full-size car. And your hotels, keep it at like a $40 or $50 a night room. Me, I'm coming up with my group of guys. We're in a town car, and we're staying at the Marriott. There were like I remember one time we opened up the door. Macho Man was right next to us, because they had their rooms were all paid for TV back then. So everyone it was always like a Marriott or something like that, Courtyard or something like that. But they never came up to me and said anything. It was okay. So I don't, I don't understand why or that. It's probably because Terry Garvin liked me, but so they never bothered me about the rent a car I had or anything like that. So, but that was like the biggest differences, and another other thing that really stands out to me, and um, people say it's the opposite, but I don't remember it being that way. I think WCW's ring was so much harder than WWF's. WWF's was hard, but WCW's was hard. It was a wooden ring, 18 by 18-foot ring, and WWF was a steel ring, and it was a 20 by 20. But I remember it being a lot harder than WCW. I mean, a lot softer than WCW. WCW's ring was really stiff, really, really hard. I mean, you take those big power bombs and choke slams and stuff like that, it feels like your insides are you're gonna just like all's gonna come out from the bottom end. It's like like you would take a bump, one of those big bumps, and like, oh man, that hurts. You can just feel it all the way down to the core, shall we say?
Right. Where was your career at during the Monday Night Wars?
I mean, see, 96, they moved their whole operations down to Orlando, Florida, to MGM, because it was during the Olympics, the Summer Olympic Games, and all the Turner people that did their production couldn't do it because the Olympic Games was going to be in Atlanta. So I happen to live in Orlando, so right outside Orlando. So, it was great for me, but also it was good for me because Kevin Sullivan was the booker. So during the Monday Night Wars, Kevin Sullivan was the booker. So I remember the first time I went there, I met at the hotel, and we all stayed at the hotel, and then we would ride a charter bus over. And so I'm standing outside the hotel talking. It's me, Kevin Sullivan, Jimmy Hart, Paul Orndorff, Mike Graham, and Terry Taylor. Pretty much Kevin and a lot of his staff, right? So Kevin's like, hey, Paul, because Paul booked all the enhancement guys. So he's like, hey, I want you to introduce you to this old friend of mine, Cassey Thompson. He's here locally. He's a good hand, all this stuff. So we want to use him on everything that we can. And then he told Terry Taylor, because Terry was the matchmaker. So he told Terry, he's like, hey, Terry, I want you to take care of him. He's not here to sit around. Put him to work. So basically, we'd go to Universal or Disney when they did the tapings. They would tape 3 or 4 tapings a day, and they would tape it like 2-3 weeks every 3 months. I was looking at they're out of my reach, but I ran across when I was building the memorabilia for my room, my passes from like Universal and Disney, and all the dates were on it, because it was like we were there in May and they were there again in July. So and we were there, for 3 years there, but we were there every single week. I mean, I'm sorry, we were there like 3 weeks every 2 to 3 months. So in that 3 weeks time, we're wrestling 21 days straight. And so they're wrestling 3 to 4 tapings a day, and I was on almost every single taping. If there's 4 tapings, I might have been on 3 of them. Sometimes there's 3, and I was on all 3. Because basically that's how you got paid. Is basically you got everyone start off at $150, and it was per match. But Kevin bumped me up, so I got a lot of guys are getting $150. I was getting $250 a match. So, 250, and then he ended up bumping me up to 500, which was like, oh man, this is great. So I was getting 500 a match.
Right.
So that, boy, you wrestle. Just the difference is you would wrestle. Basically, they had the enhancement pay, and then they had the guys they'd bring in, like they bring Greg Valentine. They pay him like $750 a match before if he wasn't under contract. It's either 500 or $750 a match if you weren't on contract. At least that's how when I was there and everything. Right. So, but yeah, during the Monday Night Wars, that's where it was because of all that. So I was on all the tapings and everything, and then they built that stadium at MGM to do a Nitro. And I think they did it for 3 weeks in a row. Every Monday night they did there. And I was buddies with Sarge, Buddy Lee Parker, Sarge. He wrestled and he also did the ring and everything. So he's like, hey man, he's real down there, cool guy. He's buddies with the Armstrongs. I mean, so everyone's big group, He's like, hey man, you want to ring the bell? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, you get paid like $350 to ring the bell during Nitro. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll ring that bell. Yeah. So I'm sitting up. They have that stadium that held about 400 or 500 people. I'm up on the where it had the WCW sign on the scaffolding, up 3 high. I'm sitting up there, and right behind me is where Tower of Terror was. You could see that. Right. So I had like the best view in the building, right above the ring and everything. And I'm ringing the bell, and each get paid $350 a night just to ring the bell. I'm like, oh, this is great because I remember like a lot of the important stuff for the Monday Night Wars happened during those couple weeks at MGM. You had where Hogan's first appearance after he turned to Hollywood Hogan. They had that big, and this is seen all the time where Kevin Nash took Rey Mysterio like a human dart and threw him into that trailer. I was actually standing right behind them when that happened. Okay. And that's when someone watching Nitro called 911, and the fire department and the police and everyone showed up, thought it was something, but they didn't realize it was the wrestling being taped there and everything. So it was kind of chaotic and crazy.
I don't think you ever hear the same answer from different people when it comes to talking about Eric Bischoff or Vince McMahon. What was your experience like with those gentlemen?
I can tell you this. If they're an enhancement guy and they say they have an opinion or experiences with Eric Bischoff, they're probably lying. It didn't happen very often. Right. My one experience I had, I was wrestling, me and my old partner, Cliff Anderson, we were wrestling Dick Slater and Mike Enos. They were rough and ready. So I wrestled Dickie a bunch on independent shows and stuff like that. And I knew Mike and everything. I used to room with after this match, I ended up room with him all the time because of the match. So I was like, he used to do a big reverse slam where you pick him up and just throw him over your head. I said, why don't you do that off the top rope? I said, I'll make myself post myself up where you can do it. And he's like, I've never done it before. I said, that'd be easy. Just pick me up, walk up. We'll walk up and do it. He's like, okay. So we ended up doing it off the second rope and everything. What happened? And then Dickie was like, hey man, remember that spot you do in the corner? I used to run. He'd shoot me straight in, like really hard. And I would like hit it and then do a flip, like a handstand and flip over the top of the turnbuckle and pole and go to the floor. And he's like, hey, you want to do that spot? I'm like, yeah, sure. So we're in there and we're wrestling, and Mike's picks me up to do the reverse slam. As he's throwing me over his head, apparently my foot kicks the camera because the cameraman was right there trying to get a good shot. And I kicked the camera with my foot. And boom, the camera shattered, the lens shattered and everything. And then we're back in there, and Dickie's like, hey, man, you ready to do your spot? I'm like, yeah. So he shoots me into the corner. I did the big flip over the top. And same thing. This is Jackie Crockett, the camera guy. And Jackie was a cool guy. He was one of the boys. and he's right there, the same thing. And I land on top of Jackie in another camera. So they're doing the pin, 1, 2, 3. All the referees had IFBs, where the booking office or whatever, anyone could talk to them. I heard them say, go to the book, send them to the booking office. And so they're like, hey, go to the booking office. The ref's like counting 1, 2, 3. Hey, go to the booking office. And I'm like, they're like, Cassey, go to the booking office. I'm like thinking, oh shit, okay, this is good. I said, I've been taking these big bumps, working hard, so maybe they're going to show their appreciation. Maybe they're going to put me on a little contract or something. So I'm all feeling good, chest all, swelled up, walking in there. And as I'm about to walk in there, I see Dick Slater and Mike Enos like sliding back out behind me. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. This is not me offering me no contract or anything. So to set the stage when we're in there, we're in a room that's probably about 12 by 12. It's not a big room. They have the monitor in there. And this is who's in there. There was Arn Anderson, who was doing the talking. Kevin Sullivan, which was the booker. You had Paul Orndorff as his assistant. Arn was an assistant. Jimmy Hart was in there. Terry Taylor, Mike Graham, Eric Bischoff, the president of WCW, and Hogan was in there, Hulk Hogan. Mm-hmm. And Arn's like, Cassey, we really appreciate everything you do for us. He's like, you're here. We bring you up here all the time because we know how good of a job you're going to do for us. I'm like, But we can't have you break in one, let alone two $60,000 cameras in one match. And I'm like, I felt like I was in the principal's office,
right.
Standing there like you're like all dizzy. And he's like, you know what? Just screw up the spot. It's easier and cheaper for us to fix it in post. Because that's what happens. Right. If you mess something up, when you're watching live, you see them do something and just do the same move right after it because they can fix it in post.
Okay.
They take it out and fix it when they're doing the editing. He says, hell, Cassey, he said, it's cheaper if you just hurt your body. It's easier cheaper for us to fix your body than it is to pay for those cameras. I'm like, okay. He's like, you just can't have that no more. I'm like, all right. And he's the only one talking. Everyone's eyes are on me. So I'm like, question. Like, yeah. I said, dude, am I going to still get my pay today? He's like, yes, you're going to get your pay. And get out of here. I'm like, okay. So I was kind of like my head down and everything. And Mike Eames was like, man, I'm so sorry, bro. He's like, the reason why I thought it wasn't a celebratory celebration going on there. When Mike and them were sliding out, Mike looked at me and says, drinks are on me tonight at the bar. And I'm like, shit, this isn't good. So at the time, I didn't know I broke the cameras. Right. I had no clue. So I was all down there. I was like, oh, this sucks and all this stuff. So the next morning, I'm always one of the first ones there and everything, or those tapings. And then I'm walking by. Kevin walked by and he's like, hey, baby, how many cameras are you going to break today? his laugh and everything, And I'm like, okay. And then Orndorff saw me and he's like, hey, he says, I can't stand those camera guys. If they're in your way again, you break that camera. He's like, he's just like going all crazy. He said, he's like, I can't stand them. I'm glad you did that and everything. Mm-hmm. So I felt good after that, Like, okay, everything's fine. Everything's good. So that's my story with Eric Bischoff. The only other story with Eric Bischoff is that his daughter was selling Girl Scout cookies. And if you didn't buy the Girl Scout cookies when you're if you didn't order some off the list, when your contract is up, he wasn't going to renew you unless you bought some. Wasn't going to have the meeting to even renew you. So, I bought some cookies there then too. But I was there during the meetings. Like he would talk to everyone. That's everyone talking to the whole entire roster that was there. So, but one-on-one conversations. in encounters. It was very limited. We weren't even on his radar ever, But I was on the radar because Kevin Sullivan was a really close friend of mine, So it was kind of cool, and a lot of the guys knew that Kevin was my boy. So because I remember Kevin was wrestling like him and Jackie were wrestling people all the time, and he'd shit can them out, and Jackie just beat the shit out of him. And I remember once he's going through all the guys, and Johnny Swinger was doing the hits. He's like, "Man, you're going to be next." I said, "I ain't next." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Nah, man." I said, "Kevin's not going to wrestle me. He's not going to do that to me." And I'm just thinking, yeah, I'm hoping he's not. I'm just talking a bunch of trash, He's like, "Nah." I said, "Kevin's my boy. I'm never getting." Looked at the sheet, and it was Kevin Sullivan versus Johnny Swingers. Man, it's me. I said, "Yeah, I told you it's never going to be me." I never did wrestle him on that, so I didn't have to worry about that. So, but I don't. I think I take it as Kevin was protecting me,
Right. Who was it that surprised you the most behind the scenes? And it doesn't have to be a pro wrestler. It could be someone in management. Doesn't matter who. But who was it that surprised you the most?
I think would be a wrestler, but also I wrestled him before, Paul Orndorff, and I was smart. I was in a tag team match with him in Roma, so I was smart enough to go to him first without my partner and say, "Hey, Paul, I'm wrestling you guys tonight. Anything you want to do?" That way I could set up a spot with him before the other guy got there, and I got left out or anything. So like, "Hey, you know how to do the pile driver?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Make sure your partner knows how to do it. We're gonna take the finish on him." I'm like, "All right, no problem, cool." And but Paul became the agent, and Paul took a liking to me, and it might have had a lot to do with Kevin Sullivan. When that day we met at the hotel, he's like, "Hey, take care of him. He's my boy," and all this stuff. And it happened to be that Paul was like, "Hey, aren't you're local here?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "So you know all the guys and everything, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna start coming to you to find the guys and everything." I said, "Yeah, but there's other guys that's already doing this."
Right.
Yeah, like the Cuban assassin was bringing guys up. This person was bringing guys up. He's like, "I don't care." He said, "I'm going to you from now on." I said, "That's going to cause a lot of heat on me." He's like, "If there's heat, you tell him to come to see me, and I'll take care of it," which he did. Cuban assassin got heat with me, and I said, "Hey, talk to Paul." He's like, "I talked to Paul." He says, "It's all good." He told me what's going on. And so he's like, "I just want to keep it to one person." That way, he said, "But you're going to be held accountable if you're not a good guy that's going to do the job that has the right thing that we're looking for, the body, the attitude, the ability, all this stuff." He's like, "Hey, I want good Christian young men." I'm like, "Good Christian young men in the wrestling business?" I'm like, "No problem, Paul. I got you." So, but after all my matches, it's like he watched every one of my matches and was like, "Hey, come here. Don't do this. Don't." Or he would tell me, "Hey, this is good." And Paul was very intense. He was like, everything was like, like, in a football huddle. That's how his mentality was. All jacked up, all high intensity all the time. So I was like, "Man, I must be the shits." And I was telling it to Mike Enos, because like I said, after that happened, I ended up just staying at Mike's room, Mike and Jerry Lynn. So we ended up just every time they came to do a taping, I ended up just staying in their room. They're like, "Hey, you're staying with us, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, cool." So ended up becoming really good friends and everything, all the three of us. Um, so um, but I was like, "Man, I must be the shits." And he's always like, "Nah, bro." He says if he doesn't like you, if he doesn't see something in you, he's not going to waste his time to talk to you, to tell you, and all this stuff. So I think he's the one person that really stood out to me, because he didn't have to take me. I was brought up there just to you know do the job, because if they find a guy that wasn't good, he's one and done. He's out of there. But he took time and took me to the side to talk to me, to teach me, and all that stuff. So I think he'd be the one person that really, really stuck out the most to me.
What was your darkest moment in wrestling?
Man, I don't know if I even had I've never been the person like that had any kind of dark moments. Nothing bad happened to me during my time. I mean, I've had broke bones, injuries, and stuff like that. But a lot of it, we just worked through it all because, you know, if you're not there, someone else is going to take your place. So
Right.
we didn't have the liberty of um, being able to, take the time off and got paid and all that. It's not really dark. It's one of the things that might relate to this is the trainer would only take care of. He treated the enhancement people like we were jobbers. Like, you're jobbers. Don't need to worry about you. And I remember my back was all screwed up, and I was working through it, you know, because so basically what I needed to be able to get some biofreeze on it. I needed to get some TENS unit, adjustment or things like that that all the other guys would have got after the matches and stuff like that. And I remember I was in a little section off to the side, you know, changing where our little part of the locker room was. It was me, the Armstrongs, Chris Benoit, and um, Regal was there too, Steven Regal. And so they're like, Benoit and Regal, like, well, what did he do? What's he doing? And I'm like, nah, it's no big deal, but this is kind of what's going on. He's like, oh no, hell no, no. That's not how that's going to happen here. And so Benoit and Regal got the trainer and was like, no, you're going to take care of. We're all the same here. It's not a pecking order of
Right.
stuff. He's like, you're going to take care of all of us equally. He says, when he comes out of the ring, if he comes out and he wants tape on his wrist, you better have tape. When he comes out, you better get that knife and cut those things off his wrist. If he needs his back worked on, you worked on it. And he scared the living shit out of the trainer. I swear to God, that trainer like took care of me more than anyone, because of that. And talking about another guy that stuck out was Scott Hall. Scott Hall watched me wrestle Sid a bunch because I was there when he was Diamond Stud, all that stuff. And we were both from Florida and Orlando. So we were, we'd always talk like, yeah, yo, man, I want to work you. He said, you take that good bump in the corner. He said, I like to throw someone hard. You take a really good bump out and all that. I'm like, hell no, man. I said, you're killing those people chopping them. I said, you chop me like that, I'm gonna chop you back. He's like, he's laughing. He's like, man, I'll work. I said, no, I'm not gonna work you. I don't want to work you. And we were like, because we were both in Orlando, we were going up to. He's like, hey man, we'll ride up to the pay-per-view with me. It's up in Jacksonville. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And it happens to be when his contract was up and everything. And he called me. He's like, hey man, I don't think I'm going. I'm like, oh, okay, what's up? He's like, I said, everything okay? He's like, no man. He's like, I got an offer for Vince, and I don't know. What should I do? And it's, I'm like, he's like, what would you do? I'm like, oh man, what should I do? Um, um, hold on one second. So I was like, I was like, my dog just came. I was like, man, you just got to do what you think's best for you. Don't worry about anything else. I didn't have any help in his decision or anything, but he did talk to me about it and everything. But he always liked me because I took good bumps and because I made the big guys look really good. So he wanted to work me, and he'd always like, "Oh, I want to work you." And then I knew him afterwards. When he became, Scott Hall. When he became NWO and all that. I would see him. I was like, "Oh man, pray for me, brother. Pray for me. I need help. I need to, I need to clean up my life and all this stuff and everything." So I knew him real well and everything. So he kind of stood out. Was always really cool. Like Sid was really good with me too, because um, he I wrestled him so much. So it was like then another guy that I wrestled a lot and had great matches with was Alex Wright. We were both around the same age and everything, and we'd have big 50-50, or actually he'd give most of the match away to me because he's like, hey, the babyface has to have the comeback and everything.
Right.
Another guy, Jim Powers, was like that. He's like, Teddy Long doesn't like me giving you so much during the match, but I don't care. It's not Teddy's match; it's mine. He's like, you're the heel. I'm a babyface. In order for me to get over, I have to have a comeback. Right. And he just wants to do his big spot where he's like 5 or 6 clotheslines in a row, you know. But he was always good to me too.
Couple more questions. Unfortunately, we lost Kevin Sullivan a couple of years ago. I know you were close, really good friends with Kevin. What did his death? How did his death affect you?
Yeah, he's a friend. So I mean, anytime you have a close friend, I mean, he wasn't like a friend. Oh yeah, I know Kevin. No, Kevin was a friend that I knew his family, I knew his wife, I knew his kids. He knew my family, my kids. I stayed at his place. We traveled the road hundreds and hundreds and thousands of miles. And we talked on a daily basis, you know, and I was business partners with him for a little while too. So, you know, you just miss those conversations where you just call and say, hey, Kevin, what's up? He said, hey, baby, what's going on? How's the kids? You know, just that little conversation that you had that you can't have anymore, you know, because he's gone and stuff like that. I think it was a big detriment to the business. I think he was that, his mind was that great that after WCW, because you had to look at it like this way. He was the one that was writing the shows. And Bischoff gets a lot of credit for it, but Kevin's the one who was doing all the work.
Right.
You know, that 83 weeks and everything, Kevin's the one who was writing it. And you would see Kevin writing it, and then Hogan would be like, because he'd have to write it to make it where Hogan would be saying, okay, it's good. And because, you know, if he didn't like it, Hogan would say, it doesn't work for me, brother. And that's true. That's not something they've done on TV. That's something because Hogan had creative control in his contracts. I've had many conversations. You know, I think Hulk was good. And he was cool for me and all this stuff and everything. So, you know, sometimes the Nitro had started and Kevin was rewriting the show, rewriting stuff as the first segment 1 was out there, you know? So, but you know, they had a good relationship. So Kevin, I remember Kevin opened the gym in Island Murata, actually Island Murata, called Froggy's Fitness. It was a gym. After the WCW and all that stuff, he opened it up, and I would go down there and we'd stop by the land, and he's like, this is where we're gonna have build the gym. It's gonna be the biggest workout facility and the keys and all the stuff, all state of the art and this stuff. And then I would be there a month later, and the foundation was poured, the walls were up, this stuff. So I remember he called me. He's like, hey man, we're having a grand opening. I'm like, oh cool. I said, what are you hoping for? He's like, we're hoping. He says we're hoping to get 50 pre-sold memberships before we, you know, for the grand opening, you know, party they have and all that. 50, and I said, what's your goal for the year? So we like to have 300 members for the year, but we like to have 50 pre-registered, you know, memberships sold that day. I'm like, okay. And he's like, why don't you come? You want to come down? He's like, you know, please be my guest. Come down. I said, yeah, I'll come down. I'll help you, whatever you need and everything. So he calls me, hey man, he says, Hawk just called me. And he's like, hey, you know, he says, Kevin, you've always been good to me. He says, let me help you on your grand opening. Let me come in and I'll do a signing. He says, all your promotions leading up to it. He said, I'll do everything for you for free. He said, let me help you. He's like, what am I going to say no to Hulk doing all this stuff for free? Right. So we get down there. There's literally miles and miles of cars waiting to get in there. It's like around 5,000 people showed up that day.
Wow.
He and they wanted to have, and so everyone met Hulk. He signed everyone's picture. He was like, sometimes you see Hulk and be like, oh man, all these people, you know, sign it and go. He took time, talked to everyone. He was so gracious with his time and everything. he came down. Jimmy Hart's always with him. His son Nick was there, and that was back when he was buddies with Bubba the Love Sponge, because he was there too. So and so there's around 5,000 people came through, and one of our buddies, a referee Mickey J, he brought up Bob Seger. Bob Seger was a big Hogan fan. He brought him up to Key West to meet him and everything. So we all hung out and everything. And so at the end of the day, they pre-sold over 350 memberships.
Wow.
So because of Hogan coming in, their year target goal, they surpassed that before they even opened the doors. So it was an instant success. The business was before they even turned the key to open the door because of Hogan. So, I mean, those are the kind of stories that you don't hear about Hulk.
Right.
You know, you hear all the bad stuff and, you know, things like that, that he's all about himself. Yeah, Hogan's all about Hogan, yes, but Hogan always took care of all of his boys in his clique. You know, so, and that's what people fail to remember. You know, they're like, oh, it's just Hogan's boys. Yeah, but Hogan's taking care of his boys, and they're all providing for the family because of him. You know, so, yeah, it's
when Cassey Thompson's final chapter is written, what do you want the last two paragraphs to say about you that people will remember forever?
You know, I would say, I think the biggest thing is that I get remembered as being one of the boys. You know, to me, you asked earlier, what is the whole thing that you synonymous to you make it in the business? To me, myself personally, being one of the boys is meaning that I've accomplished my childhood dream. I went from being a fan to becoming one of the boys in the business. So to me, that would be the you know, they can say whatever they want. I was stiff in the ring, sure. Yeah, it's no no denying that. You know, I might have been difficult at times and stuff like that, but I was, in the end, I was always one of the boys. I ran my own promotion. I never wrestled in my promotion because I was not one of those people. I can't stand people that have their own promotion and they're the champion.
Right.
So I purposely ran my promotion, produced our weekly TV show that was on for a couple years, and never wrestled. And I just wanted I wanted wrestling to be good from the top to the bottom, to put out a good product. And still, I took care of everyone. I still was, in that whole time, I was still one of the boys. So I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, respect in the business from your peers. That's the highest form of flattery, I think.
Where and when can people find you and Kevin Kelly?
We used to be live, but we don't do live anymore just because it's so hard. But we every Monday or Tuesday, I'm sorry, every Tuesday we drop a new show around 7 o'clock on YouTube. In Ring Wrestling Podcast. Also, all of our social media from Facebook to Instagram to Twitch to whatever X and everything is In Ring Wrestling Podcast. And I also can be found on both Facebook and Instagram as Cassey Thompson. And, you know, just out there just trying to do our thing. But, you know, just like you, just trying to, you know, build an audience. We're on right now. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, which
Nice.
You'll know as well as I do that that's a lot of subscribers. You know, it's to get organic subscribers.
Yep.
You know, it's a challenge. I see how hard you're working. We're doing the same thing out there. We're closer to 1,000 than we are to that. We're right in the mid 900s right now. So I figure in the next week or so we'll be at 1,000, in which doesn't seem like a lot to all that's going out there. But if you really know anything about YouTube, you know that's the pivotal success status quo or whatever, you know.
It really is. And guys, check out their podcast. I promise you will not be disappointed. It's great. It really is. Cassey, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
We will be in Florida, moving at the end of August. So,
oh, really?
Once we get settled in, I'm gonna call you. We'll go have lunch.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm like about 20, 25 minutes from.
Yeah.
We're in Ocala all the time. My cobbler's in Ocala.
Really?
For my boots. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, we will absolutely. Maybe me, you, and Bob Cook will catch.
Yeah. Dory Funk Jr.'s up there too, right?
Does he?
Yeah.
Man, I think Florida's the place to be at if you're.
Oh man, it's always everyone has. Well, one of the big things is there's no state taxes.
Yeah.
So, all the boys, it used to be all the WWF boys, and then all of a sudden it was the WCW boys, and then everyone WWE, all the boys lived in Florida, and then that's before they had FCW and Performance and NXT.
Right.
It's just Florida is like. It's easy getting out of. You have the beaches. You have everything. You have great weather. So, yeah, it's great, man. You'll during come November, December, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, it is Christmas time, and I'm wearing shorts. I'm not like used to up in Minnesota.
I'm excited. I'm originally from Louisiana. Been in Minnesota for 23 years, and it's time for me to get back to my southern roots.
Yeah. And we don't have no protests, no riots, or nothing down there. You're going to love it, bro. It's nice and peaceful.
It is. Again, thank you so very much for being on the podcast again. I really, really appreciate it. Guys, please don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow night, it'll be myself, Bob Cook, and Robbie Ido. We'll be talking about Monday Night Raw. Find out if we liked it, we loved it, or was it just okay? I don't know. Find out from the two professionals, the veterans who are in the business. I'm talking about, again, WCW, Robbie Ido, WCW and WWE, the Cooker, Bob Cook, and me, the Loudmouth fan. We'll be giving you guys our honest opinion. Cassey, again, thank you so much, my friend. You enjoy the rest of your week. And guys, check out that podcast with Kevin Kelly and Cassey Thompson.